You're listening to Beat Autoimmune and Thrive, the podcast all about reversing and preventing autoimmune conditions so you can live your most vibrant life as soon as possible. We talk about autoimmune root causes, actionable solutions, and inspirational healing stories. I'm Palmer Kippola, and I used to have MS. Today, I'm an author, a speaker, a functional medicine certified health coach, a pickleball player, and nature lover who's helped thousands of people reclaim their health and their best lives. Let's dive into this episode. Hello, everybody. Mary Brooks is back in the house. We are so happy to have her back. Mary, as you may recall, did an interview with us on how to sleep properly or how to sleep better based on her own experience overcoming a sleeping pill addiction and figuring things out on her own. And now Mary works with a lot of women to help them sleep better, heal their thyroids, get more energy. And today we're going to be focused on specifically let's call it the vicious cycle of high cortisol and blood sugar dysregulation when it comes to sleep, because there is a definite relationship between our hormones, our stress hormones, and our blood sugar. And when our blood sugar goes up, our stress hormones go up, and we're not going to be sleeping well. So I'm thrilled that Mary was generous enough with her time to come back and share some of her knowledge and pearls of wisdom on getting a better night's sleep. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. Good. Glad to see you again.
Yeah, it's just great. So I just want us to dive right in. Talk to us, if you will, about this relationship, because there is definitely a relationship between blood sugar and cortisol and sleep. And I've seen some of the research, and it's not pretty.
No.
When we don't get enough sleep, which many researchers say is less than 7 hours night sleep, we are twice as likely to develop diabetes.
Yeah,
that is not a pretty picture. And we know that diabetes is a setup for autoimmune and Alzheimer's and other really bad problems, and we don't want to go down that path.
Right.
So help us with this, because we got a lot of folks who are either not falling asleep well, or they're waking up at 3 a.m. and getting into that monkey mind mental loop.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk just a little bit about cortisol first, and how cortisol should function, and probably how it's not functioning. And then we're going to tie it into blood sugar. Sound good? Okay. So our cortisol is our stress hormone, but it's also our waking up hormone. It's our energy hormone. Like, we are basically hardwired into the sun. We forget that, we know that nature, runs on that cycle, but we forget that as humans, we do. And if you really think about it, autoimmune has escalated at the same level, or at the same, rate that a lot of other things in our culture have changed. And one of them is lack of sleep, right? Or just this, what we call sort of circadian rhythm disruption, which is a fancy way of saying, like, we're having trouble getting up in the morning. And then probably the biggest problem is we stay up late at night, and we're on our devices at night, or we're problem solving at night, or our blood sugar is so dysregulated that we are tired like all day long, and then we get that second wind at night, right?
That explains so much.
Right. So we have to start with just our pacing of our life. And if you want to just break it down into the very, very simplest things, we really have got to get back in the habit of getting up with the sun and going to sleep when the sun goes down, because your cortisol has this little bell-shaped curve where it rises in the morning, and that's waking you up. That's when the melatonin stops working, and the cortisol says, like, hey, let's get up and go. And what we were wired for is what we would have to go out and hunt our food then, right? Like, that's when our day would begin. We didn't have a choice. We couldn't stay in bed and watch cartoons and eat cereal or whatever we do now.
Or look on our iPhone, for example.
We had to go. We had to get going, right?
Uh-huh.
And then, maybe we'd have a meal, and then we'd be finding our shelter, and our day would be winding down. So the first step in this whole, like, why am I not sleeping, is to kind of look back 12 hours and see what happens. Because when you wake up on time, then your melatonin will say, okay, I'll kick in 12 hours later. So if you're one of these people that stays up late or does something and you don't wake up till 10 o'clock in the morning, then it takes your melatonin another 12 hours to reset again.
Wow. That is super profound. I just want to pause for a second because I mean, our biology has not changed.
No.
Even though our lives have become busier and we have these devices that are keeping us up at night and we have all of these modern daily pressures,
right?
Our biology, our circadian rhythms have not changed.
You can't evolve that fast.
No, this is not a genetic problem, folks. This is a lifestyle problem.
Right.
So what's the starting point? Is it to set a bedtime? Because I'm a big fan that adults should have bedtimes just like kids. And I am in bed at 8:30 if I had my way most nights.
Right. I was one of those people that had to kind of force myself back into that. But bedtime and wake up time, consistency helps. So, but if you're someone who happens to wake up when it's dark, or you live in a climate that's not very sunny, which a lot of us do, the best thing that you can do is open your blinds very first thing so that you're getting natural light, because the trigger for your cortisol to start working is your eyelids. That's where the melatonin, your body says stop making the melatonin, breaks it down, and you need the natural light to wake you up.
That is beautiful. I love it. And a lot of people recommend, if you're able to get outside and get some early morning sun.
Yep.
Now, that means for me, taking off the glasses and getting it directly in the eyes so that my melatonin production, isn't there something with the retina that happens that just connects us to the sun like a battery? Yep.
So morning sun, first thing, and having a consistent bedtime. Those people who are still struggling with the sleep, this is going to take a while. So maybe you aim for waking up at 7 or whatever that time is, and know that that will evolve. But consistent wake up time, consistent bedtime, natural light. And if you can't get natural light, there are also some. I just got one, so I'm not 100% like ready to recommend a brand, but I got like a happy light. There are some lights that you can purchase to put next to your bed or on your desk so that you're getting that it's basically mimicking full spectrum sun. But what you don't want to do, which is what we are all doing, is grabbing for our phone first thing. Right? So that's throwing off your circadian rhythm. So I always say this, if you have a problem here, look backwards, because it starts with how you run your day. So that's basically, as you start to want that curve to happen, it starts with having a consistent wake up time, getting natural sun. Then the next thing is we can have this really extreme, like when I look at those graphs, and you can have someone who either like they don't have any like pep, like they don't have any rise in that curve of their cortisol, or they have a ton. It's like super exaggerated. So that tells us a couple things. Like if it's not decent in the morning, probably chances are your blood sugar is dysregulated from the night before. Right? So we'll talk about that. And then if it's exaggerated, probably you're super stressed out. And that means that you're either under a lot of stress, or you may have an exaggerated reaction to stress. Like we've all done that, where it's like, our cage has been so rattled that like every little thing like sets us off, right?
Totally. So what you've just said is that we have a natural cortisol pattern. It should start high in the morning, taper off. I should actually be doing it this way so that people can actually see what I'm doing. I'm trying to do it backwards. High in the morning, like that's the cortisol awakening response. It comes down throughout the day, and then you get like a little bit of an upward, but you don't want it, right?
No.
Or should it stay flat?
No, it should kind of go like a camel. Like you get it up in the morning, and then by afternoon, it should be sort of tapering out and leveling out through the day. And then afternoon, evening, it's like low, low, low.
Low, low, low. You don't want it to go back up at all.
No.
Okay.
No, you don't. The people who so you'll either see someone spikes in the morning, or sometimes it's not at all in the morning and they're just flatline. They can't get out of bed. That's the person who has to drink a lot of coffee, takes them to like noon to even like feel like they're functioning. You all know that person, right? Then sometimes people are just like low in the afternoon. Often that's because their eating is off.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll have someone who's been kind of during the day, and then they hit a pop at night. And that's that person, we call them like tired but wired. They get that second wind. They're, that's when they're online, like, shopping or doing whatever at night, corresponding with the world. They're eating
Watching
at night.
TV.
Yeah.
Phones.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the cortisol dysregulation pattern. We don't want it to be flatlined, and we don't want it to be too high. So please continue with what we do.
Okay. So that's those bookends. And I think we even talked about that with the sleep last time. Those are really, really critical. And they may sound simple, but when it comes to our body, these, anyone can make something complicated, but it takes like simplicity is amazing. And that is just very simple. It's free. Anyone can do it. So that's where it starts. And then the second really is just blood sugar, because as you said, when we have highs and lows in our blood sugar, what is happening is insulin is swinging to compensate from that. And it's not just the high highs, it's the fact that it's up and then the body pulls it back down. So when it comes to autoimmune, if your body is already saying, I don't know whether I'm fighting, a germ or a virus outside my body or myself, that pendulum swing is creating literally chaos in your body. So the simplest thing is to eat for blood sugar, and we can talk about that. And it's interesting because blood sugar is a little bit different for all of us. We're finding out with the microbiome that, you and I could eat the same plate of food, but your constitution, your microbiome will mean that the blood sugar response for one person could be a little bit different. So we're just going to break this down into like kind of big mainstream like building blocks.
Perfect. The 80-20 rule.
Yeah, exactly. Like at least if you're doing this, you're going a long way. So the biggest thing that I have found that people do wrong is they wait too long to eat breakfast. And one of the most telling signs of low blood sugar is no appetite or nausea in the morning. When people say, I have a headache, I'm tired, I don't feel good, I don't want breakfast, that actually means usually you are hypoglycemic, low blood sugar. So you've got to just reverse that. You've got to start eating a bigger breakfast. And I find most women, and will do better with mostly protein and fat, not a lot of carbohydrates. If you get carbohydrates at all, get them from like a vegetable, something that has some fiber in it. Because when it comes to blood sugar, if you have protein, if you have fat, and if you have fiber, that meal is going to hit your bloodstream in a much less chaotic way.
That is really, really beautiful. And a lot of the folks, myself included, we avoid certain foods like grains and dairy, and for many of us, eggs. So that is a conundrum when it comes to breakfast, right? Plus, we hear a lot about the importance of intermittent fasting or doing a ketogenic style diet. We don't have to go, too far down the field. What are you typically recommending to people in the autoimmune world in terms of what they should be eating at breakfast time, or do you not want to go down?
No, that's a great question. Of course, you know more about each person and, their unique like food needs. But I think one of the things that your question made me think of is that it's really helpful to break the rule about breakfast needs to look like breakfast.
Yeah.
That it does not have to be that it can be some soup. It can be some protein and some vegetables that may not seem like breakfast to you, but that can be breakfast. So I personally cannot eat eggs myself, so that's a challenge for me. I do a smoothie a lot. I do a collagen smoothie that's got some greens in it, very little fruit. Like I literally put like a frozen cherry in it, and I put some fat in it, and I love it. Like I really feel like it isn't always the thing that I think that I want. Like truth be told, I want a bagel. That's the truth. That's the truth. I haven't had one in a really long time, but but when I have that, my energy is stable. I don't feel shaky. I don't feel headachy. I feel like really strong. So but
I want to go into details on that smoothie, because I think you're hitting like a wellspring of information here that is going to benefit so many people. What's the base of it? Do you use coconut milk, another kind of non-dairy?
So I use a tiny bit of coconut water because I like that for my gut, and I use it with a little bit of aloe. If you're really if you're watching carbs, you would want to avoid that.
Yeah.
So water, a little bit of either a non-dairy milk, coconut, almond, hemp. Those, and make sure you're looking at the ingredients and that it, doesn't have anything.
Yeah. And you can make your own coconut milk, is something to do. I'm experimenting with making different hemp seed products. Like I just made a fantastic hemp seed cream cheese, which was unbelievable. Nice. So these non-dairy things that you can make at home, I think are really great for adding to smoothies. So one cherry. I love that. It's not a bag of berries, right?
That's the biggest mistake that people make with smoothies is they turn them into a fruit bomb. They're like, I put pineapple and mango and kiwi and
no.
And like, dude, that's a Coke. Like,
no bananas. I mean, I'm really serious. This is a group. Most people are going to have hypothyroid. They're going to have hypoglycemia. And they're going to be having maybe some weight issues, right? This is maybe all of us, low and slow metabolism. That is what autoimmune is. Like 90% of the people with autoimmune have low and slow metabolisms. This is not a time to be stuffing the fruit. Fructose is part of the obesity problem, right? So we just want to be really mindful about that, to eat, the right fruits, maybe berries, a tiny little bit in season. Is that accurate with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do enough just to give it a little texture, and I like the frozen because it kind of somehow mixes in there. So I used, however you get to that liquid.
Yeah.
I use collagen because I feel like when I look across the board, protein powders and what's in them, and I feel like collagen it's one ingredient. It's great for the gut.
Yeah.
It's great for a protein, and it doesn't have a texture or a taste or whatever. So
completely invisible. Just make sure that you get it 100% grass-fed. I just wanted to throw that in there to make sure that people, when they're buying this, are getting it from grass-fed cows, right?
Right. So, and you can get a bovine source, or you can get a marine source if you don't want to go. And you really, this could be a conversation for another time, but you just want to make sure you're using a company that has a transparent COA, that they don't have, pesticides and herbicides and all that heavy metals, because that's one of the few foods that we do eat day in and day out. So we really just kind of want to watch it with that. And that's honestly why I switched over to collagen after using whey for a really long time. Got
it. So one more quick thing on the oil. You have to add me what kind of fat you add to this, because we want to get the complete smoothie here.
Right. So your fat can be, you can use MCT oil. You can use a little bit of avocado. You could use chia, or you could use, what's the other one I use? Sometimes flax. And then I use a big handful of greens, and I try to rotate that. Like right now I'm using dandelion greens because I know those are great for the liver. And I always put a big piece of ginger in mine because I like it. I like something that has an anti-inflammatory in it. And honestly, when you get out of that habit of, when you think about it, our traditional breakfasts in the US, they're all sweet, cornflakes or sugar smacks or cereal or muffin. And you get out of that whole habit of because sweet leads you to sweet, leads you to sweet. So I feel like eating something like that that's more savory, or like I said before, you can do a soup, you can do some leftover. The easiest thing too is just, what did you have for dinner last night? If you have a little bit of leftover protein, and then you can add some greens to it or some vegetables, that will be that first log on the fire that won't spike your blood sugar.
Beautifully said. I love it. Okay. We've got the first log on the fire now. We've got that in our tummy, and we do it within how long after waking do you suggest?
30 minutes. That's hard. And that's the other thing that people often do who are fatigued or in that cortisol thing and they can't sleep is they use coffee for the first 30, 45 hour, 2 hours of their day. I used to do that. And so once I switched, it's amazing how that revs my engine a whole lot better. And then I don't end up in that snacky, cravey, carby thing going down every afternoon and every evening.
Beautifully said. Okay. So it's the morning, you've woken up, it's a half hour after you're waking, you've had your fantastic collagen smoothie. Then what do we do to make sure that we're getting a good night's sleep?
So the next thing is to honestly eat breakfast earlier, 11:30. And
You mean lunch?
Oh, I'm sorry, lunch. I'm so stuck in breakfast. Earlier lunch, like 11:30. So, and I love things like soups for lunch. I love a big, colorful salad with a protein and a fat on there. I always try to get a little bit of a fermented food. That tends to be lunch. And then dinner being more protein and vegetables, protein, salad, vegetables, whatever combination.
And what time do you eat dinner?
I try to eat dinner by 6.
Yeah. We eat here at 5:30 if we can help it and try to be finished by 6. And so this leads me to the next question, which I'm really personally interested in, because in this blood sugar discussion, we talk about eating before bed as a possibility. And yet the conundrum is we're also told when we want to prevent disease and Alzheimer's and so forth, stop eating 3 hours before bed. So tell us about how you balance that.
So, I mean, again, these rules that like when everybody says they don't, they can't apply to everyone. But in autoimmune, I mean, first of all, you've got to sleep. You cannot get better if you're not sleeping. And if you have, people either have that, I can't fall asleep, I stay up too late, or I wake up a million times and I'm exhausted in the morning. A lot of that is high cortisol, high stress, perception of stress, how you've managed your day, and it's your blood sugar. So if you're not sleeping through the night, one of the things that you can do is do a small, I'm not talking about get a bag of chips or order a pizza. I'm talking about having a little snack, like a handful of pistachios, maybe and I know we said no banana, but like something like, even if like 2 pieces of banana with a little bit of sea salt, just so that you get a little bit of glycogen and you get some protein and a little bit of fat to keep you like stabilized overnight. The other thing I love, just because the banana might be a little bit controversial, is doing a tea, because I think some type of habit where you're having a restorative tonic at night, some like warm beverage, and then using something like MCT oil in the tea, because that MCT oil will not spike your blood sugar, is super good for the gut, and then the liver can use it. So, because what's happening is a lot of times when you're waking up, your blood sugar is so low that your body is like, I'm dying, save me. And that's what's happening.
Wow.
So not having another meal, but having something like that helps you get through the sleep cycle.
That restores those stores of glycogen, which is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
So I'm personally not a fan of the banana before bed. I think I'm much bigger fan of the tea, like a chamomile tea, something that is soothing, right? That takes you into the evening and bedtime to get into that kind of habit. There's a tea called Calm, which is really good. Yeah. Plus a little MCT oil. Would you ever add any collagen powder into that?
You definitely could. Yeah.
Okay. That's a little bit of the protein along with the MCT oil. And that could be the first level experiment that somebody does. Yep. Like if you're waking up at 3 a.m. and this is something that you're just in this habit of doing, and you have already built in the consistent wake time, the consistent bedtime, you are managing your stress. Maybe you're getting morning sunlight, you're walking or doing some sort of exercise during the day. Like you've got all those dialed in, right? The sleep hygiene, all of that's good, but you're still waking up at 3 a.m. Right. Is that when you'd recommend, let's try something right before bed?
I would. Yeah. And you can do a handful of pistachios. You could do a teaspoon of sunflower butter. I mean, anything you could do. You could do a quarter of a avocado. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I know for me, like sort of once you clean up the kitchen, you don't want to be back in there. So those are all very portable, mini, you're not going to be burping them up all night, or you're not going to be digesting this, big chunk of food. These are very light, but very strategic that will level your blood sugar.
And you're not going to be having to clean the kitchen again.
Very big.
I love it. Light and strategic. So, I think you've hit a lot of the pillars here.
Yep.
I think you've covered it. Is there anything that we're missing in terms of how we manage this blood sugar? Do you recommend, here's a question I have for you. Do you recommend that we test our blood sugar? Do we get a device to get the data? Do we get a cortisol awakening test? Like, what do you recommend that people do if they want more data on what's really going on for them?
So I honestly wouldn't. I always say, like, with this, try those pieces first and be consistent. And if I didn't say this before, for blood sugar, you don't want to undereat, you don't want to overeat, you don't want to skip meals. And we all do that. At the time and time again, I have had someone who says, I'm so tired, blah, blah, blah. And I ask them, okay, I look at their food, maybe it all adds up for the day, is looking like, oh, that's great. And then you look at the tempo, and the tempo is whacked. Oh. So they forget, and they don't eat their lunch until 2:00. Mm-hmm. That means they're in the hole, and then they've had this compensation with their cortisol that throws them off. And if you've got other things going on, gut infections or food issues, you just can't put any more gasoline on the fire. So those, if you have to set an alarm on your phone just to keep you in this kind of tempo, then that really makes a difference. The other thing I would say, if I didn't say it, is minerals. So pink sea salt, use that a lot. I use it very liberally. I think that helps with minerals, and I'm sure you're probably going to talk more about that. No, I think that's it. The blood sugar when you eat, adding the evening snack, managing your stress. If you feel yourself escalating, because a lot of times what happens is we are so used to getting into these like hypervigilance or hyperarousal stages, you got to stay out in front of that, because otherwise, everything is driving. Oh, and the question you had was, would you test? I wouldn't get into a glucometer right away. I don't feel like that's really necessary. I think it does make sense to run a fasting insulin, just because you want to see what's going on with that. And then you can you always want to do a saliva test, never do a blood test for cortisol, because what you want to see all 4 points on the curve, right? 5 ideally. You want to see what's happening. So you might want to do that, because everybody's different. Some will have, like I said, big jump in the morning, which tells us maybe the blood sugar isn't stable, or you're super stressed out. So you would want to do, what's necessary for that morning. Or sometimes you'll see it like poop out in the afternoon, which means you need a little more food, right? Your blood sugar is probably crashing. Or sometimes I've seen people spike. Like I had a client who's working out every afternoon, and I was like, all right, you need to have a carbohydrate before that workout. And then, if it's like under in the evening, you might want to see your curve, so you know what's going on for you, so you know where to intervene.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One other question for you, and that is about the ketogenic diet. I mentioned it a short while ago. I know it's not for everyone. And for those of you who don't know the ketogenic diet, this is where we're talking about very extremely low levels of carbohydrate to maybe less than 30 net carbs per day, and a very high level of healthy fats.
Yeah.
And moderate amounts of protein. So what do you see in this regard in terms of helping people with blood sugar issues? Because I understand, and I follow Dr. Jason Fung, and he's helping a lot of people recover from diabetes and obesity with a ketogenic diet plus intermittent fasting.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. I think I like the principles of keto for the most part. I think you have to have some fundamentals dialed in before you, to me, IF and that are just a little more advanced. And I feel like, don't take on anything like that unless you know that you're well hydrated, that you don't have nutrient deficiencies, that your blood sugar is, fairly stable, and you're not having like these sugar crashes. Like I would rather someone do what I just said, get that dialed in, and then take it up a notch if they're like trying to lose weight. But I guess the one thing that I feel that I notice whenever I see like a ketogenic menu, not enough vegetables. Like if you think you can drive through Burger King and you get like the burger off the thing and no, I'm sorry. No. Like, and that's my concern with it is that people are interpreting it like that and they're eating only bacon and sausage and maybe they're not. And I don't think that's how it was intended. Right. But I think sometimes it's all in the interpretation.
Beautifully said. And I think the folks in this group are wise enough not to be doing that. And we know that we need to get our 100% grass-fed meat. But I think what you said is perfect, that let's dial in the basics before we start adding anything on top of that, right? Because I think when you'll know that what Mary is talking about and this works is when you're getting a good night's sleep. Yeah. You're going to bed, you're falling asleep, you're not waking up throughout the night, and you're waking up rested and raring to go, right? I mean, is that when we know that we've got this stable blood sugar and cortisol?
Yeah. I mean, you want that sense that, your nervous system feels happy and you're feeling, more stable energy during the day. And because here's the thing with even fasting, I mean, I know cultures have been doing it forever, but we're not living in their life anymore. Mm-hmm. We're not in that culture. And probably when people were fasting, they were probably also resting.
That's really a beautiful point. And that's a whole other topic. And I know that men often do way better with fasting and a ketogenic diet than women do. And I think maybe reserve for another time to get into that discussion, because I think what you've laid out in terms of just balancing blood sugar, managing our cortisol to get a good night's sleep, that's what we're focused on right here and now. So I think this has been terrific. Do you have any other thoughts around these?
I mean, I answer this question for people all the time. They're like, can you count macros for me? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I'm like, look, I can do it in my sleep. Like I went to school for that. But I think that in of itself can cause stress of like, am I getting it right? And is it wrong? And blah, blah, blah. So I like this sort of, I'm dating myself. You remember Garanimals? They were like, this shorts goes with the top. Like it's very simple. You look at the closet and you go, okay, these don't go together. It's kind of like that. If you look at your plate and you have some protein, and I mean, that's an egg, that's chicken, that's fish, that's hemp, that's what else? Since I don't always think of the plant-based protein. If you have some fat, and the fat's not hard to get, you don't need gobs and gobs, because women, if they take a high carb diet and then they add a lot of fat to it, they get fat, and then they don't understand why.
Yes.
I did that. I so did that. Just so you know, I so did that because I wasn't really taking all that in. So protein, your fat doesn't take a lot. A little piece of avocado, whatever. Lots of vegetables. Lots, because you cannot get your hormones under control. You cannot feed your microbiome. You can't get your blood sugar right. It's the fiber from the fruits and the vegetables that regulate the blood sugar. And that's where we're all getting it wrong. Like we are so concentrated on these macros that we're forgetting that fiber. I think the fiber should be the fourth macro. So if you do it like that, you can't get it wrong.
Oh my goodness. That is so beautiful. I love it. I love it. I think that is the perfect place to stop this particular.
Right. Anyone can complicate the simple, but it takes brilliance to simplify the complicated. And that's
absolutely
what we need to be doing.
Wasn't it Einstein who said, you want to make things as simple as possible, but no simpler, just as simple as possible. I mean, it's just clarity.
Yeah. I mean, who has time for that? Yeah. But if you look at your plate and you see it like that, you're pretty much good to go.
Love it, Mary. Thank you so much for being here today. This has been
always fun to talk with you.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I think you are speaking the language of the folks that are in this group. You have been in their shoes, and now you're a practitioner helping so many people. You've gone to school for this. You've been on the journey. You know what this is like. You've done it and you've come out the other side. I mean, who better to speak on things than those of us who've been through it and back, right?
Yep, definitely.
Well, I just loved having you here. Thank you so much for making the time. Can't wait to talk again. So let's do it really soon.
We will.
All right. Thank you, Mary.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and if you feel inspired, please leave a quick review so other people can find it too. Now, if you want to beat autoimmune and thrive, make sure you sign up for my free video training at freeautoimmunetraining.com. That's freeautoimmunetraining.com, and watch the first video right away. Take good care. Bye for now.